All right. I think we're probably aces now. Are we good, Valerio? Are we good? All right. I think this is a good time to take a dumbass needs a coffee break. Okay. Hello, Internet. I am Bobby with Madness Labs, and we are back for another Madness Cast. This is episode 7. We're off to a rough start, but it's okay. That's been the last couple weeks. It's been crazy here. We've been really scaling up. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. Let me know on the live chat if you guys can't hear me. Now you can hear me type. All right. So we are back for episode 7. Last time on Madness Cast, we covered how to actually do a database service. We wrote a sample database service using Firestore, and then we were able to hook up like our apps page in order to add an app onto Firestore. We also read our list of apps, showed them on the screen, all that cool stuff. And AJ Mercer was nice enough to reach out to us via email. We had a good conversation with him about what was the best way to implement that. Maybe I should have, instead of trying to call this database service on every page, we should go about feeding those in. And so we really liked that whole idea. Again, what was really great was that he's like, I totally understand. You guys are playing around and just trying these things out. And then kind of making the polished up videos on YouTube, the shorter ones for the stuff that we've got locked down. So this, awesome. Hey, what's going on, Valerio? We are awesome. We have had a crazy week. So like I said, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently this time. Instead of calling our class all the time, we're actually going to inject the actual, the props, we're going to inject our services as props into all of our components, and I'll go back over that here in a second. But yeah, this week has been crazy. This last couple weeks have been crazy. We've been expanding our team here at Madness Labs. We've got a couple people that are helping us knock some projects out. So we've been getting them up to speed and working on our processes, working on our systems. And so we didn't really have time to do the Madness Cast last week, but we are back on it this week, and we'll be back on it from here on out, unless something crazy happens. We've got a lot of stuff cooking right now, but it's been really cool, and we really enjoy the Madness Cast for us to get to talk directly with you guys, to see kind of what's going on. And we've actually been we wanted to actually use this as a chance to build our website, but more what it's become is okay, well, how are you guys doing this? How do you guys do this? What would you do in this case? Which has been awesome. I think what's been really cool is that's given us an opportunity to play around with stuff like Firestore, and the new Auth service and all these things, and be able to kind of play a little bit more with these new technologies, make some stuff in a sandbox as we play with you guys, and then polishing them up and then putting them into packaged products, which has been really cool. So we want to keep that trend up. And so this week we were asked by someone on Twitter, and his name was, oh God, I want to say Alex. But I'm probably wrong. So yeah, we were asked on YouTube or on Twitter. God, I'm all over the place today. We were asked on Twitter if we could make a video on, yes, Alex Patterson reached out on Twitter and said, hey, that allows us to log in via PWA on Google. We'd love to see that. And talking to him a little bit more, basically, there's a kind of bug with authing with inside of an Ionic PWA. So once you've installed it, add it to your home screen, there's a little bit of a bug where if you try to open the authentication process and it tries to do the pop-up, it actually will break because you're inside of a little sandbox environment. So you don't actually have access to open up a pop-up window. So it kind of breaks the flow. But there is a way around it, and we found it, and we thought it'd be cool to share it with you guys in this video, as well as give you guys the starter for a good auth service so that you can implement this in your project and get off to the races. So while I was, and again, this might be in the cast later on in the week, because we actually went about recording like for the last 30 minutes and went over a lot of this stuff, but I did not click the button. So you guys are just now, like, we're going to get you guys caught up and we're going to move forward. So let's jump right back in. I will skip the usual Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, subscribe, notification bell thingy, you know, even though I just didn't. And we will go right into it. So first off, I went ahead and pushed all of this up to GitHub. Again, this came from, the request for this came from an Alex Patterson, so Pat Teal at Twitter. And basically, he was wanting us to hook up an auth service that we could use inside of a PWA. So we were actually able to successfully do that. And so now let's like show you guys how we went about doing it, and show you all the kind of gotchas along the way. So one of the big things that we had starting out was we need to update our Ionic components. So earlier on in the video, I went ahead and hooked up this form. So I threw together an Ionic card in our app home, and this Ion card has a form inside of it, and when it's submitted, it fires this login event, and then that puts out on the screen our email input and our password input element, and it puts those onto the console, and we can see them over here. So if you're not on the newest newest version of Ionic Core, you probably won't be able to actually submit your form, because the login button, even if you give it an Ion button, if you give it the type of submit, it actually doesn't carry that through on the older versions of Ionic Core. So I was on version 0.65, 0.0.65 or something like that, and they have recently updated to 0.1.4, and they also merged all of the Ionic Core. They merged that into the master branch. So what this means for all you people that are super nerdy like ourselves who have been keeping up with this stuff, basically this means we're very, very close to a stable release of Ionic 4. And what this means is we should be able to take all of these components that we're making and the stuff that we're doing in Stencil, and we should be able to just wire that right into Ionic 4, and we should be off to the races. So if you're already building Ionic, Ionic Stencil applications, and you want to start firing this up into Ionic 4, this should be really, really simple for you to integrate, and you'll get all those extra features that Angular 4 offers, Angular 4 or 5, whatever crazy version they're on now. And you'll get all that awesome framework sauce to lay on top of your Stencil components. For us, we're gonna keep wiring up manually. We've really enjoyed not using a framework. It's been really refreshing to just go back to like JavaScript as a basic, like, understandable language. So yeah, like, we've really enjoyed just using JavaScript, no framework. But most likely when Ionic 4 drops, our opinion will change heavily, because there will be some awesome sauce stuff in there. But that should be the first thing that you do. If you jump into your application, go ahead and update your Ionic Core to the latest version, because there's tons of stuff that they've been working on there, as well as Stencil Core. Get on the newest version there just to make sure that nothing breaks as you're trying to follow along here. So, and again, remember to run your npm install so that you get those new versions. Okay, so now that we've got our newest version of Ionic, I threw together a little form. So I just went into like my home page. I made an Ionic card, made a form, have it hooked up to this login event, and then basically I've just got two fields, an email and a password, and then I've got a submit button. And you can see that I am just basically wired up to just put these guys on the screen. No special sauce, nothing crazy here yet, right? But where it's going to get crazy is in our auth service. So I already have an auth service made. If you guys want to see this, go to the repo that we have linked in the description. Head on to that guy, and you should be able to, and I'll post it here on the chat. So you guys can like jump into that repo, and it's got the auth service already made. We didn't want to make this live, mainly because we've already been building it over the last couple weeks. And we really just wanted to have it working, have something kind of built, and then we'll just walk over what it does and get it actually wired up. And especially since we've just been recording for a half hour of nothing, like it's time is crucial now. Okay, so this auth service works pretty simply. There's a lot of commented stuff a lot of stuff that has been commented out. This is stuff that if you are running this inside of an Ionic application, so like an Ionic 2 application, or you maybe spin up a Stencil application with like the new capacitor project, or maybe just Cordova itself, maybe you want to spin this into a native application. You can use these imports from Ionic Native and actually go about getting these working on all full native. So on your Cordova device, it would actually launch through the Twitter, Facebook, and Google native login on the device. And then when you're in the web, it will automatically run the web version of Firebase's auth for Google, Twitter, and yeah, okay. So as you can see, this auth service class is pretty simple. All we have is a service and we have a session, and I don't even think we're even doing anything with the session at the moment. But the service is just going to be Firebase auth. So this has just been my general convention. When I make a service that wraps around something, I usually have a service method or a service property, and that service property usually just holds the actual service that we're currently using. So in this case, Firebase auth. And so then we're basically just starting up Firebase. So this is standard, starting Firebase stuff. And then we have this little extra bit. And this bit here is what does the magic when we're actually like doing a redirect in an OAuth process. So this is actually where the bug happens. So Alex, when he had reached out to us, he said basically that there was an error inside of like a PWA. So when you actually run your application, so you add it to your home screen and you try to run through the login process, it actually kills out because usually people are using the pop-up, OAuth via pop-up. So it pops up the little window, you click on your account that you want to log in with, the window disappears, and then the page you were originally on logs you into whatever system. So when you install that, you're again running in a sandbox environment, so you don't really have the ability to pop open that extra window like you had before. But what you can do is you can achieve that same sign-in with a redirect instead. So you can redirect to the social provider and then redirect back to your application. And then this is actually what picks up on the redirect result. So this get redirect result, if you check the Firebase auth documentation, this event is kind of what's fired whenever a redirect comes back to your web application with like an auth token. So this is what we've added, and we actually emit a login event at this point. So we've got a custom event that you can see down here for emit logged in and emit logged out. These are custom events that we actually fire whenever you're logging in or logging out, and that way we can pick up on those things inside of our components or inside of our application and then actually do something, and we pass through the data that we get from Firebase. So again, I've been talking for already a half hour or more, so let me take a brief water break here and use this as a chance to say, have you heard about our Patreon and our Twitter? Or at Madness Labs. If you guys are Twitter heads like us, jump on jump on Madness Labs. Jump on Twitter and add us at Madness Labs. And also feel free, if you enjoy this kind of stuff, subscribe to us. We are going to be doing this every week. We're still kind of narrowing down what day we want to do it on. We might have a poll this week on like what would be best for you guys, Tuesday, Wednesdays, or Thursdays. Usually we're going to be somewhere around 5 o'clock CST. But yeah, we're still kind of ironing out exactly the details on how we want to do these casts, but we want to do them every week. Cool. So let's jump back in here and go back over this auth service a little bit more. So we start our service, right, and it's all running, everything's aces, and then we have all these methods down here, and we've basically just wrapped around the stuff that Firebase gives us. So we have the create user with email and password, which we've made create user. That takes an email and a password, and then we've got with email, which authenticates them with an email address, again taking an email address and password, and that's what we're going to wire up to our form over here. And then we've got down here, you can see these are the commented out methods I was talking about. We have the Facebook native, Google native, and Twitter native. All those methods, again, already written, ready to go. So if you're using this inside of an Ionic 2 application or something, this is like wired up and ready to go. It's not specific to Stencil. It's not like Stencil is anything. Again, remember, Stencil compiles out to nothing. It's just JavaScript, HTML and CSS. So you can use the service just as well inside of your Ionic application, which is what makes this stuff so cool. So awesome. So again, there's the code all commented out for the native stuff, already ready to go, wired up. Okay, so now we have with social here. And again, this commented out code is what kind of dictates between, like, if it's Cordova and it's Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, it'll run that. Otherwise, it should run the web version that we have down here, uncommented. So if you're using this inside of a native application, feel free to use those methods. It'll get you off to a great start. And we might actually also like upload a gist or something with like the final completed version with the full wrapper around Firebase. But this should get you to a great start. Then we have our auth with social method. It takes a network, which is like Google, Facebook, Twitter, whatever the network they're logging into, and then redirect whether they're going to be redirected for the OAuth process or it's going to use the pop-up. So the pop-up is kind of like the default. Okay, so then we have a bit of magic here. We're going to check window.match media. Display mode is standalone. And what this is going to do, this is actually going to check to see if you're running inside of a PWA, if you're running inside of a standalone Android application. So when you save the app to your home screen and you launch the application, if you try to log in with a social network, this is going to fire and or this is going to be true. And so this is a little extra bit is going to run. And this extra bit, all it does is like it tells it to automatically do the redirect. So, so you don't have to really pass in this redirect boolean. It's really just if you want to override it. But it figures out like, okay, you're on a standalone, PWA. I'm going to go ahead and use the redirect flow. And then, okay, no, you're on a desktop. You're not inside of a PWA. I'm going to go ahead and use the OAuth pop-up. So a little bit of magic we put in here just to make sure that you don't have to like beat your head against the wall on getting this auth stuff set up. And then we have the logout method, simple enough, logs you out. Awesome, so that's pretty much the gist. And again, you can see that every single one of these, or not again, but you can see that, again, if you're me. So again, each one of these actually just passes back a promise. So you should be able to say like, okay, this with auth with email, and then whenever it's done, it'll pass back the user information. You can do something, or you have the ability to latch on to the events that we've created, the auth logged in and auth logged out, in order to take action there. Or you can even use the Firebase instance when the Firebase instance changes. You can always access the Firebase auth via session. But again, try to limit yourself from doing that, because we really want to make sure that like if we changed auth providers to a different provider, that we're only binding to these methods here that we can like change out for some other service, but they'll still be the same methods. So like no matter what auth service I'm going to use, I'm going to need to be able to create a user with it. I'm going to need to be able to log in with an email address and password. Those are just going to have to be there. Okay, so far so good, I hope. So then we go into our My App. So this My App is like the main, remember this is like the main file that like sits around our entire application. So what we're going to do in here is at the very top, we need to import our auth service. Then we need to declare an auth property on our class. And then we need to type it with the auth service so that it knows like how to do our autocomplete, our typings. And then we're going to set a state value. I want to watch Game Theory right now too, I know. So I just lost all my subscribers, I'm sure. Like anybody who's watching this probably just jumped off. They're like, oh, MatPat's on, I'm out. Okay. So I love MatPat. I love you, MatPat. Okay, so then we've got a state item that we've created here. And this state item is going to contain our auth service and our DB. So this is what we were talking with AJ about. So instead of us doing what we were doing before, where we're kind of like inside of our pages, importing our database service or our auth service, instead we're actually going to like import them, do it inside the main top application, and then we're going to create a state item to hold those and then pass those as component props into our router so that we pass them into each one of our components. So okay, very, very hefty explanation, but really simple. So I import my database service, I import my auth service, I then set these items on set these properties on the class, and then here in my component did load, I do a this database equals new database service, this auth equals new auth service. Then I make my default props state property with the auth and the DB, and then I pass that as component props into my route. So stencil router, what's really cool is, like, remember we're actually going, this URL is going to load this component. So when I'm on this URL, it's going to actually load in the app home component. So what's cool is, since we're loading a component, you would expect to be able to pass in component props. And that's exactly what we can do. So we can use this component props prop or attribute, and then pass in our default props, which in this case is going to be our auth and our DB. And then that'll pass that into the component. So that should be working. Let's do component props on this guy. Why are you angry? Oh, I need my stencil router. Okay, so just to reiterate, so we have our auth service, we're then importing our auth service, we're then instantiating our auth service, and then we're putting it inside of like a list of props that we're going to pass or inject into our actual home page, our apps page, and our profile page. So how do we know if it's working, you might ask? That's a good question. So to see if your auth service is working, go ahead and do something like this. Say this.auth, which is what we called it here in our new auth service. And we're going to say on auth changed, and then that's going to be had one parameter, and that parameter is going to be a callback that's going to run whenever auth state has changed. And you can see here in my browser here, it says auth data null because the user is not logged in, so there is null. There is no data to pass back for the currently authenticated user. But if they were logged in, this would pass back all of the user's data that's currently logged in. So this is a great place to be able to check to say, like, hey, if the user's logged in, else the user's logged out. So we can do something to like conditionally show or hide pieces of the interface, or load different components, or even load whole different routers, which is what we actually did in another project where we implemented this. So hold please for a brief coffee break. Okay, so cool. So now we know our auth service is working. We're now pretty sure we're passing it down into our app homepage. So let's jump into our app home and let's pass that prop in. So up here at the top, let's do prop. And down here, we'll say app prop. And we'll call auth. And we'll say it's got auth service. And we'll probably need to import okay, so we're going to import that just to make sure that we get our typings. We're not calling it, so I don't believe it's actually going to like compile it and like, I think it's going to not include it because it's never called, I would hope. If I'm wrong, please tell me because I want to know. Okay, so now we've got our auth prop being passed in. So again, anything that we pass into this, oh my God, too many files, too many files. Anything we pass into our stencil route for component props, each one of those, in this case, auth and DB, are going to be props now that we can access on our actual pages, our routes. So now we should be able to also access our DB if we wanted to, but let's just use our auth for right now. And then what's great is since we've used these typings, since we put this typing inside of here, we should get autocomplete that knows exactly what we're trying to get at. So we should be able to say something like this dot auth dot boom. There's our list of autocomplete methods that we have on our auth service. So now we should be able to say, okay, we want to auth with email. And oh, we're getting a red underline, so let's figure out why. So we need an email, expected 2 arguments, but got 0. So we need an email that's going to be a string and a password that's a string. Well, it just so happens, internets, that I've already made a constant variable that like is our actual email input. So I added oh geez, Morty. I added a ID and ID and ID on each one of these Ion inputs. And remember that an Ion input actually goes about and like puts an input on the page. So Ion input is not an input, it's a wrapper around an input. So we need to do an ID of input and then the input inside of there. And then we're using this app home L and then a query selector. And app home L is the element decorator from the Stencil library. So we want to actually use this element, and what this element does is this actually creates a reference to the current element or the current component that we're inside. So in this case, I tend to name them like after the page, and then I put L after it so that I know that it is an element. And then you can see my typings here. I actually am using HTML app home element. And this typing is not like random. I didn't make it. It's actually generated by Stencil. So the compiler reads typing for every single one of your components. So if you do like HTML, and you can see all of your different components that you've made inside your project, you can see all the different typings for them that Stencil's created for you. So we're going to use our app home element. And what that's going to do is that allows us to do what we've done down here and say this.app home element. So we're going to say this.app home L. As soon as we click dot, it's going to know about all the things that are in our component for app home element. So we can see here the app home L. We can also see our login method. So login, see the method that we have. And we can also do things like run a query selector, because remember, it's just an HTML element. It's a reference to a DOM element. So we can do a query selector, and then we can this is traditionally this is the replacement for if you're used to like jQuery or something like that. This is the replacement for you having to do something like this, email input. So the equivalent to that would be what I have here, this app home query selector, email input. And what's cool, and the only thing that's a little bit different, is here we would have to use like a 0, but because we're using query selector, we're actually only going to get one reference, the one element, the first element that matches this query selector. So, and again, I covered this in a previous video and about my preferences for like saving stuff to state and when to do that. In this case, again, I don't need the email address or the password to like save or render the page at all, so I don't want to save that to state. I want to reserve myself from saving to state unless it's in order to like cause a refresh of some part of the screen, to like paint, because those are what's going to cost, those different paints are what's going to cost you resources. So remember that like only use your state, and the same thing with like my services here on my app. I'm not calling these as state because I don't want them tracked. Like I don't want to, and I'm never going to update and change these guys. So why would I save them to state? I need to like save the state items for being things that are going to be part of the state, something that's going to change and cause a render to fire. Okay, so enough of my soapbox. Cool, we've got our element here. So now we should be able to do email input L dot value. So again, I'm getting awesome autocomplete here, and the reason why is because I'm using my typing. So my HTML input element automatically knows all the things that I can do with an input. Same thing with password input element value. Oops, no, not validation message, value. Cool. So now it's authing like that. That is really all we need in order to get it to start authing. But I'm going to go ahead and do a dot then, because remember, each one of these returns a promise. So I'm going to do a dot then, and then I'm going to see what happens like when it runs. I'm also going to do a dot catch. And if you've never used promises, you really should start looking into them, because they are the greatest thing ever that will happen to you, other than async await, which is very related. So look up both of those because they are freaking awesome. Hello again to everyone on the live cast. Feel free to fire away any questions that you have. I'm just going to be plugging away here, and I'll try to answer your stuff as quickly as I possibly can. I've already been filming for like a half hour or like 45 minutes before you guys jumped in, and then I just decided to stream it, so I think I've got everyone caught up to where we were, and now we're moving forward, so that's good. It's good. Okay, so we've got our auth with email. We're passing in our email input value. We're passing in our password input value. And then when we're done, we're going to pass back through the data. And let's console log that. And let's go ahead and console.error our error.message. So that way we can see really what's going on once we submit. So let's go ahead and type something in. Let's type in my email address, poc125@gmail, test123. And when I log in, hey, there we go. So it gives us our error because we caught the error here with our catch. So our catch caught the error from Firebase, and the Firebase says, hey, the given sign-in provider is disabled for Firebase. You need to enable it in your Firebase console. So if you get that guy, what that means is that you need to go to your Firebase console, so console.firebase.google.com, and you need to go about enabling your application for authentication. So in this case, my Madness Labs PWA project, I need to head on over to the authentication tab. And then if you haven't created a project yet, like this is your first time with Firebase, once you log in, you should see this screen. Go ahead and click Add Project, and then you'll name it. They'll give you your little configuration piece, or like your little snippet of JavaScript. You can paste that in the top of your auth file, and then you should be good to go. Like you should be hooked up to your Firebase and able to do your authing. I'll probably cover in a future video like how to like pull these config variables out. Like we don't generally do this inside of our projects. So like I'll do a future video on like actually taking these guys out and putting them somewhere smarter. But for right now, just slap them in there and head on over to your Firebase project. So once you get it set up, it should look something like this with your sidebar on the left, and then head into authentication. And then you should see something like this where it tells you like, hey, we need to set up your sign-in methods. So let's go ahead and click on that. And let's for right now just turn on the email address and password. So let's turn that guy on, click save. Shamadamadding. There we go, we're done. So now let's go ahead and refresh our page and let's try it again. This time, this says there is no record corresponding to this identifier. The user may have been deleted. So hello Builder Chad. Well, Builder Chad, I hope that you will be building some stuff with Stencil here pretty soon, because it has been life-changing, my friend. It's been absolutely life-changing. Okay, so now we've got a different error, right? We've got an error that says, hey, we couldn't actually find a user for this. So we need to create a user. Luckily, we've made creating a user just as easy. Okay, so to do that, let's go in here, and instead of logging in, let's just create our user this time. And we're going to do the exact same thing. So let's copy this, let's paste it there. All right, let's go ahead and put that out there. All right, let's say create user. And create user takes the same thing. It takes an email address and it takes a password. The data it's going to return is going to be a little different. And shamading, here we go. All right, so let's go ahead and enter in my email at gmail.com. Test 1, 2, no, let's see. Okay, so now I log in, and you can see that I actually get the auth data back this time. So it's actually handing me back my email address, my name, every location I've ever lived. No, it's not handing any of that back. Just handing back my name, basic information, email address, if I have a profile picture set. Again, it's all permission based, so whatever you give them permission to. In this case, since we're doing email verification, we're not going to have, I don't believe we're going to have an actual profile picture. Yeah, no photo. But if we were to do social networks, if they allow you to, you'll be able to get their actual photo. Sometimes you'll be able to get phone number. Again, it just depends on what permissions that you have and what you're asking for. Okay, so cool. Now we should have, if we go back to our Firebase here, if we go into users, we should have my user signed up via email address. That easy, right? Awesome. So now we're logged in. We're logged in. I think, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, we are actually fully logged in. So to test this, remember we have in our My App, we have this event that's watching for on auth state changed or on auth changed. And this is actually going to fire directly when the page loads. So automatically we're seeing, boom, we're already logged in with our email address. So it creates the account and then it automatically logs you in as that account. And that may not be desirable for your use case, or it may be, who knows. But what's great is that no matter what, So if they log in via social network, or they log in via an email address, or they create an account, no matter how it ends up happening, they all go through Firebase. They all come back with a Firebase token. And then what you can do is you can use Firebase admin, the admin side, on your like backend, your API with PHP or with Node. And you can actually then take that Firebase token and then figure out what user that is. So you can figure out which user, what email address they have, and then go about taking the auth action, taking action on it on your actual server. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the gist of like the email authentication. So let's make sure it works though, right? So let's go ahead and head back in our app homepage. Let's make sure that the auth with email works correctly. So we'll change that to with email. And actually, no, let's leave that there. Let's create another one. And we'll call this one register. Take our type button here. And we're going to take that guy out. And this one, we're going to take this guy out. Glad to have you with us, Builder Chad. Feel free to subscribe and like and hit us up on Twitter. We love us. We love us some Twitter here at Madness Labs. Haven't been on as much recently, sadly, but we every now and then we have some dank memes that we post out on our awesome Twitter channel. We also would love you to donate to our Patreon if these are helpful, and if you're feeling so inclined, feel free to help support us, because we want to put out more of this content more frequently with more production value, because maybe you guys want an intro to this stuff, maybe you want me to actually write a script for once, who knows. But that's how you show us with Patreon. Okay, so now we've got our register event, or a register method, and our register method is going to register a user. Let's go ahead and just like copy this card here. I want to be as lazy as possible. I'm just like copy this card, paste, register, there, done. Okay, I'm gonna slap like maybe an H2 up here. Register. Slap an H2 up here, just slapping stuff all together. Slap it there, slap it there, slap, slap, slap. Okay, login. Okay, so now we should have two different forms. One lets us log in, one lets us register. Break for water. No problem, Chad. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Any feedback you can give, any questions that you have, feel free to fire away. We're fairly nice people. We don't bite hard. So yeah, I mean, feel free to shoot away. If not, just sit back and enjoy the show. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and try my login this time. So I'm gonna log in with my Gmail account, and I'm going to try to remember the password I decided to set. Yay! Okay, so I was able to log in. I've got my data. It's got a user inside of it. There's all my stuff. Woo! So we've got, in just a matter of a couple minutes, we've got register and login both working. Let's just be certain. I'm gonna register account for this guy. So boom, I created a Bobby at MadnessLabs.net, my business email, create an account there, and I should be able to go back into my users here, refresh, and oh my god, where is it? Wait, did it work? Hold please. Let's make sure this works. Register. This dot register. Oh, auth with email. Create account. Create user. Okay, there we go. It helped if I had the right stuff like typed in the right places. That sort of helps sometimes. Bobby at MadnessLabs.net. Oh, and another thing, we're probably going to want to change these from email input to like register. Register. Okay, so yeah, let's give them like unique IDs because that would help. Dash register. Okay, there we go. So now, shrink my bookmarks down, or my sidebar here. Okay, so now we've got a register event, or a register method. Oh my god, am I talking? Blah, 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 blah. I've got a login method, and I've got a register method. My register method should be hooked up at this point, so I should be able to say madnesslabs.net. Boom! Okay, I was able to log or register. So now if I refresh my users over here, awesome, I see a new email user, Bobby@madnesslabs.net. And if I want to log in as that user, boom, there's my data. Woo! Okay, so in just a matter of a couple minutes, we've already got login via email address and password. Again, there's tons of stuff you can do here, but let's go ahead and finish setting up some of the other ones. Let's go ahead and set up like Facebook. So if we go into sign-in methods again, we'll see that Facebook is disabled. So all we need to do is click on the little edit button here. We click enable, and then we're going to actually need to go and complete our setup. So we need to go into this link, and this should take us, no, sorry, I lied. We need to go into, if you go into this link, it'll give you the documentation that you need in order to do what you're trying to do. So what we're going to need is we want the Facebook login, and it's going to show you like here's how you go about getting all this stuff set up. So we don't need any of that. We just need to go to the Facebook developer site. So if you go to developers.facebook.com, you can actually go about creating apps. And if you've ever like seen like an app where you like log in and it opens up Facebook, and then you type in your password and it says like, hey, this site wants to have access to your basic profile. This is where all that magic starts to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new app here, and we're going to call this Madness Labs PWA. Let's create that, and then I'm going to have to do some crazy, oh my god, what is that? Okay, submit. Thank you, CAPTCHA. Does the Shadow DOM scope node IDs? I'm not sure about that one. I'm not super familiar myself with the Shadow DOM, but I know that like stencil components themselves can like you can actually use Shadow DOM to actually go about like applying all your styles so that nothing like bleeds outside. So I know that is an option. But yeah, I would say if you wanted like really good technical details and stuff like that, head on over to, I think it's stencilworldwide.slack.com, and they've got a stencil Slack channel, which is super useful. Or head on over to like @StencilJS on Twitter. They post it out there frequently, the link to their Slack channel, and you can ask all like the super technical details. But again, like not a super huge like Shadow DOM guy, but I know that they do a lot of stuff here with like scoping things in to make sure that nothing bleeds outside your components. We have, however, like we're not using in the projects that we've scaled up so far, we've been using like regular SCSS style sheets and stuff like that. We weren't using the Shadow DOM. So we've had some problems with like our card class gets overwritten by like Bootstrap that we had inside of another project. So we've had to like some fighting of styles and stuff like that. So probably be super useful for me to like study up on Shadow DOM. Maybe a topic for an entire cast. So if that's something that really interests you, feel free to hit us up with a comment or something like that, or hit us up on Twitter, and we'll see if we can make some time to actually dig in deeper. Okay, so now we've got our application created here on Facebook, and what we need to do is we want to do Facebook login, but they actually just changed this stuff. This is totally new to me. So now we're going to go into settings here. We're going to go into basic, I believe. Okay, cool. So our basic one, we want to say add platform, and then we want to go to website. And what's the URL of your website? Oh goodness, maybe I didn't need that. Maybe it's advanced. Yeah, actually, sorry, I lied. It's advanced. We go into advanced, and then somewhere down here, let's see, somewhere here, we need to get this link. Let's copy this. So this is our OAuth redirect. So if we go back into our app here, Let's see. Update, notification, domain. Why? They just changed this. Why? Okay. Forgive my clicking around. I'm going to figure it out. So let's try Facebook login. I don't think this is actually going to do... Okay, I think that's all we need to do. So if you click on Facebook login, it tries to walk you through a step-by-step. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So now that we've like clicked on that Facebook login, it like adds on Facebook login as a product on our app. So now we can head into Facebook login and then go into settings. And then down here in our Facebook OAuth, valid OAuth redirect URIs, we're going to paste in our URI for our application here. So I should be able to now save this change. Awesome sauce. And now what we need is we need the app ID and we need the app secret. So we're going to go in here and we're going to go under dashboard again, I believe. No, I lied. Settings. Basic. There we go. We're going to get our app ID. Boom. And then we're going to paste in our app secret, which I'm going to do off screen. Oh goodness. Passwords. Okay, so now that we got our secret, we're going to paste that into that second field and then click save. So once you're done, you should see that it says Facebook enabled. And it's going to be pretty much that same process. I'm not going to run through it on Twitter and on Google. Google's actually the easiest. We actually just click enable. So I will actually set that one up. So boom, there you go. You've got Facebook or Google login. You're done. But Twitter and GitHub are fairly similar. Same general process. I think you go to like apps.twitter.com, you create a new app, and it's the same process. It's well documented. I don't think I need to bore you guys on how to actually do each single one of those. Hopefully just setting up these two should be enough. Okay, so we've got Google and we've got Facebook enabled inside of our Firebase authentication. Sign-in method tab. Lots of stuff. Arg. Okay, so we're good there. We've got them all set up. Now we need to actually go about putting some buttons on the screen so we can do it. So let's do that. Let's head back into our app here. Put this guy back over. And under our login card, let's just add two Ion icons. Down here, login card. Okay. Forgive my terrible singing. Okay. Dash grid. So we're going to add an Ion grid. And then going to add an Ion row. Then we're going to add Ion col. Ion col. And then let's go ahead and add an Ion icon. Logo Facebook. Ion icon. Logo Google. Okay, if we did that right, coffee break. Hooray-zors! We've got a Facebook button and a Google button that are ridiculously tiny. So let's go into App Home. Let's add some quick styles. Sure. So I'm going to give this a class just to really quickly do this. Login card. Go here. Login card. Ion icon. We're going to target specifically the SVG. We're going to say height is 40 pixels, width is 40 pixels. We're going to say the icon itself is height of 40 pixels, width of 40 pixels. We're going to display block, and then we're going to margin 0 auto so that it sits right in the center. And we're going to save our app home so that we actually get that class on there that we need. Oh, yeah. Oh, that is a really great question. And actually, I can answer that very, very quickly. So in order to change our theming colors on Ionic, they went all in on CSS variables. So what we can do is if we wanted to, for instance, change the color of this login button, if we inspect this guy, we can actually scroll down and I'm a fire in my laser. Okay, this guy. Come on, guys. Okay, so see here we have Ion Color MD Primary. So this guy right here, contrast. It's fun. Okay, so this guy right here is the variable that we can use in order to set our color of our buttons. Because see, our button is getting that color, contrast color. The background color is this guy. This guy. So they went with CSS variables, which again, it's a little weird when you're coming from SCSS and when you're doing things the way that they used to. But when you think about standards and where things are headed, it makes total sense. So I'm going to put up here at the top dash dash. So this is kind of the equivalent of in SAS doing an Ion Color MD Primary. So you do something like that, right, in SAS. But now you have the ability to do these CSS variables, and then we can use those variables inside of our actual CSS rules. So you can see I changed that color to green, and boom, my buttons go green. So hopefully that answers your question. Pretty awesome stuff. So what you can do if you really want to set these up on your project, I would head into your app.css, and at the very top of your app.css, you can do this :root, and this is going to set the root styles for all of your actual application. So here is where I would actually put in like my variables, my CSS variables for my project. So for instance, in my app home here, I have like background color. So I might say like dash dash theme background color 333. So then inside of my files here, I'm going to save this. So inside of my files, my CSS or SCSS files, either one, I can do var and then dash dash theme background color. And that's going to set the background color to that 333 color. And again, if I change this to something like white. And if you're using SCSS, again, you have the ability to then like set from an SCSS variable, set these CSS variables. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can do once you get into the realm of having CSS variables. But hopefully that answers your question. Thanks for the valid question. Like we've been trying for weeks to get people to ask questions that are burning them so that we can answer them. Because again, that's a major part of what this series is. We do this stuff every day. So we're constantly building components and building services and all this stuff. So this is a chance for us to play around with some new stuff, as well as like revisit some old stuff. And then a chance for you guys to ask questions about why we're doing something, or even give us some good feedback of how we can do things better, which has already happened several times in this series, which has been great. So we hope to learn just as much from you guys as you guys are learning from us. Okay, so that's that. So I've got my variables like set up. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's get back to the authentication stuff. So let's go back to our app home, and now we want to link up these buttons to actually log in with Facebook and log in with Google. And it's going to be very simple because, again, our auth service has most of the stuff that we need. So let's go ahead and first off, let's open back up our app home.css. And what I'm going to do is just do a little fanciness here. I'm going to say and hover, and we're going to do SVG fill, and then we're going to say dash dash ion. Let's grab that variable again, Ion Color MD Primary. Var. Okay, cool. So now we should see, and let's give us a pointer, cursor pointer. There we go. So now when we highlight, we get our main app color. Awesome. Yeah. Get right to using those variables, man. Those CSS variables are freaking awesome. We've been like super happy with it. At first it was like, what? But now it's, yeah, it just makes total sense. And you can set these on like a per component and override them. Like they cascade just like everything else in CSS. So really awesome. So have fun with that. Okay, so back to live action. Let's go ahead and back into our app home. Now we've got these cool buttons and they light up with our theme color. Cool. Let's go ahead and let's hook these buttons up. So on this Ion icon, I'm going to go ahead and do an on click. And we're going to say event. It's going to be a UI event. And we're going to say this.login. And we're going to say this one is a Facebook login. So we're going to pass in the event. And then we're going to say Facebook. Because the type of login is going to be Facebook. And then we're going to do the same thing for this guy. So I'm just going to copy and paste because I'm lazy. And we're going to do Google. And then up here in our login, we want to say if type, if no type, or, oh wait, no, type is always going to equal email. So let's just do if type equals email, else if, and I could probably use a switch statement here. I don't know, I'm back and forth on switch statements. Like, some days I like them, sometimes I don't. It's like one of those giant opinions, like spaces versus tabs. I'm not going there, man. I'm not going there. Okay, so let's say type. Oh no, we're just going to do else. So if type is login, otherwise we're just going to take whatever type that they have and assume that's like a social network that we've wired up. Oh, that's right. Yeah, there we go. Let's remove that underscore because now we're actually using this variable. So I don't know if I was actually streaming when I said this the first time, but the TypeScript compiler will yell at you if you define a variable and you don't actually use it. So you can throw an underscore in front of it if you have to keep it. Like every now and then you have like a function that like you have an event that's passed through that you have to have there. So you can throw an underscore in front of it and that will make the compiler not shout at you. So I just had to remove that so that we could actually use the variable type. Okay, so if type is email, we're going to auth with email. Otherwise, we're going to this.auth.withSocial. And we're going to then pass in, because the values that it takes are the network, which in this case is the type. And then we have a redirect, which we don't need to set. And again, each one of these passes back a promise. So we're going to have a catch or a then or both. We want to set both of them. Let's do data. And we'll just console.log. Data, and then we'll do a .catch, and let's do error, and we'll say console.error, error.message. Okay, so now we should have those linked up and working. It's literally that easy, especially like head on over to the GitHub, which I think link is in the description. We've made it super easy to wire this stuff up. And again, no defining Firebase, no doing any of that, none of that, no soup for you. So cool. Now we've auth with social, pass in the type that they're logging into. In this case, it's going to be either Facebook or Google. And now when I click on these, Facebook, Okay, so it's going to give me this error, which is totally fine. This is just a can't load because the apps domain isn't in the URL or isn't like authenticated or isn't allowed. So that will go away once we go in here, go into our Facebook login, go into settings. Okay, so we should be able to go into oh, it didn't save. Okay, that's why. It didn't save my Firebase redirect. Okay. There we go. All right, so let's actually save that. So that's what error it's going to give you if you don't type in your redirect URI. So it's going to give you that error that like, hey, I wasn't able to like actually authenticate you with Facebook. Okay, cool. So now that I've got that typed in right, now when I click on it, it should actually validate me. Cool. And then we're going to get this message. And so this is this app screen, right? So under your dashboard, if you wanted like an application, or if you wanted your application to have an icon, if you go under settings and under basic, you can actually upload an app icon. So in this case, maybe I'm going to upload the avatar from Madness Labs. So maybe, I think it's on the desktop. So there we go. Madness Labs logo. Cool. I can also type in like what it is. Like, you know, you type in all the contact information, all that kind of stuff. Save that stuff. I'm going to cancel, and then I'm going to re-go back through it just so we can see it. So now when I refresh and I click on Facebook, this time I should see my actual, yep, there's our logo. Again, probably want to make sure it's properly sized and everything like that. But that's as easy as it is to actually get an app set up with Facebook. You just create the app on developers.facebook.com, and then you basically plug in your app ID and your secret on the Facebook sign-in methods under the Firebase authentication methods, sign-in methods. Go into Facebook and paste in your thing. And then now we should be able to then just do this.login or this.auth with social, and then pass in the type of social network, Facebook, and then that will generate this guy. And then once we actually click login, boom, I can get my entire credential token and all the user information. So there's my photo URL. So this is actually my Facebook profile picture. So I should be able to, yeah, look at that, woo! Okay, so awesome, we've got that. And Google should also work now too. Theirs is really easy to set up. You literally just, close this guy. You literally just click a flip switch under Google here. You just like enable it, and it just works. Go Google. I guess that's the perks of being able to like log in when you're using the platform. Okay, so we're gonna click on Google, same thing. It's gonna open up my Google selector. I can select who I wanna log in as. And interesting thing to note here, remember earlier I actually logged in with email address and password. So like my user, popcorn245@gmail, I actually have a Gmail account, right? So once I log in there, what's cool is Facebook automatically, or sorry, Google, Firebase automatically knows like one email per account. So once I log in with my Gmail account, my Google authentication, it's going to change that. So no longer am I going to be an email address password account. I'm going to be instead now a social account. So it's merged. Like I can't log in now with my email address. It's going to give me an error. But my Google did log me in. Everything's good. Cool. So now we're logged in. What do we do from here? So what would probably be wise would be to actually like check. What probably be wise would be to like do some kind of a session check in our page. So like maybe like when we log in, we have your profile information popping in this card. So I think I'm like running really long on this cast, but that's because I started so late. So let's just do this one little extra bit here. We'll commit this off to GitHub and call it a night. So let's actually show some different stuff on the screen depending on whether or not you're logged in. So on our auth service, I have a public session, and it should be undefined whenever it's called. So let's go ahead and in our component will load, let's go ahead and say console.log, say this.auth.session. That happens every now and then. Roll up errors. Okay, so you can see that session is undefined because we're a component. Oh, this is will load. Probably need to switch this to did load. And that's something that I talked to Justin from Ionic. Again, if you're not on their Stencil Slack channel, I would highly recommend it. I talked to Justin, and he made a really good point about like not like in our myapp.tsx, before I was actually calling new database service up here. And what that's going to do is that's going to like instantiate these classes before the component is done loading. And so it's going to have to wait for all those things to get instantiated. So he recommended that like if at all possible, try to wait until the component is finished loading. And that way you have content on the screen as fast as possible for your user. And then you're going and doing the data collecting or doing the authing or doing whatever you need to do after the fact, which is really smart because it's going to make sure that like the first interaction is really, really quick, which is what's going to, that really helps your conversion. Okay, so cool. We've got our auth session logging out now. Let's save that. More coffee, more. Okay. Yeah, I know, right? The CSS variables are life-changing. Okay, so now let's go ahead and like have something show, or like let's have something happen whenever like we log in, like we're logged in versus when we're logged out. So to do that, let's go inside of our my app, and then here at the top, I'm going to do something, and I'm going to say session. No. Yes. Let's see. I'm debating here. I'm debating on how I want to do it. Give me 1 second. This is honest coding, peeps. This is honest coding. Don't really know how we want to do it. Cannot read session of undefined. Yeah, let's do it this way. Let's go ahead and in our My App, let's create another thing called session. Set it to any. And then down here, and it doesn't have to be there. And actually, no, let's just set it equal to false. I lied again. Okay, so session any. And then here, let's go ahead and say this.defaultProps equals ... this.defaultProps session data. Okay, so what did we do here? What are we doing here, right? So what we're doing is we're going to say in our main app, remember we're having it watch for auth state change, which fires automatically when the application loads. And then what we're doing is we're then like going to set our default props equal to an exploded default props plus session data. So this is just a shorthand. It's called a spread operator. So what this is going to do is it's going to take an object and it's going to explode it into all the different pieces. So basically, it's a way of like iterating over this object here of like auth is this auth, DB is this database. It's going to do that and then add on whatever extra values we put in here. So in this case, it's going to just take session and it's going to add it onto the end here. So that's kind of what's going on. And then the reason why we're doing this, instead of just setting this.defaultProps.session, is because Stencil is set to only render whenever we set a new value on a state item. So in this case, we want to reset default props equal to a new version of default props with this new session data. And so that should cause the render to fire. And when the render fires, it's then going to pass in all these props and we should have access to them. So let's go ahead and save that. And then now in our app home, we should be able to use our new prop session any. And then now in our component did load, let's go ahead and say console log this.session. And if everything went right, no, everything didn't go right. Okay, what didn't go right? Let's figure it out. This on auth changed. So let's first console log this out. When in doubt, console log it out. Let's make sure it is indeed firing. Okay, it is. It isn't, however, firing that render like I wanted it to. on auth date, change this default props, default props session data. And I'm taking those default props, passing them in there. So it might be, let's just pull this guy, I guess, inside. I feel like there's going to be a better way to do this. Like maybe what we want to do is, yeah, what we're probably going to want to do is instead, let's set this auth.session equals data. And I might actually do this inside of the, I might actually think about doing this inside of the service. So that way you don't have to call this on auth at all. Might be a better idea. But let's just try that. So instead of doing it this way, we're going to actually go inside of our app home now. And we're going to take the session guy out. And instead, let's call so down here, let's go ahead and like if they're logged in, they don't need to see any of this login stuff, right? So let's go ahead and around this form, let's do this dot auth and this dot auth dot session question mark. So if they're logged in, basically, we're going to, and something that I like to do personally is when things start to get big and bulky like this, what I like to do is, kind of break up my renders. So maybe I want to do like render login card, and then we can return. And then what we can do is we can just like take our login card, and what you're going to find is like these things that you're taking and putting in these different render functions, these are usually good candidates for being their own components. So in a traditional application, I'd probably have a login card, registration card. Each one of these would be its own thing. So I'm going to do that just inside of this file here for now. And I'll show you why I'm doing this. All right, cool. So now I can do the same thing down here. This dot login card, render login card, and then this dot render register card. And I'm going to get the same result as I had before. But what's cool is now I can say this dot auth and this dot auth dot session. We're not going to show anything. So let's go ahead and do that same thing here. So now if auth exists, if the auth service has been passed in and they have an auth session, then we should not show anything. And I'm still showing something. So it's all about getting that render to fire. So we haven't got a render to fire. That's really kind of what the crux is here. So like whenever my auth state changes inside of my app and I set this new session variable, I don't actually fire a state change. So that's kind of the crux here, like what's really causing the problem. I could take this guy out, and then inside of my app home, and my component did load, I can say this dot on auth, no, sorry, this dot auth dot on auth changed. And then I could do something in here where I set like state session any, and then I could say data, let's console log my data, this session equals data. And then down here, we don't need auth anymore. Where'd it go? Where'd my render? So we don't need this stuff anymore. So the difference here is that this is going to cause a state error. All right, this is new. So I am passing through my auth. So again, I'm gonna, my own words here. When in doubt, console log it out. All right, for some reason, this .auth is undefined when the component finishes loading, which makes no sense because I can clearly see it is working inside of our login methods. So it's working there. So that would tell me that maybe it is not quite ready. So a good way to test this is to just pop a set timeout, maybe like a second, around this guy, just to see if maybe it's just not quite ready yet. Yep. So it's totally what it is. And I think that's kind of strange. I've never really had that happen. Like usually a prop exists and it's ready to go the second that a component loads. Let me see if I can put this down to like 1 or like 100 hundredth of a millisecond or 100 milliseconds. Okay, yeah. So now you can see that we're actually getting the results we expected before. And again, remember the difference here is that before, when we were passing, when we were checking our auth state or auth service for a session, we actually weren't causing a state change. So if the state doesn't change, we don't fire a new render. So that's kind of what was going on. If we had, what was kind of weird though is like technically I was causing a change of the state at this level, but I'm guessing that that didn't trickle down. Like I'm guessing once the route is rendered, it's like it's all up to the component here to like take over. So again, if I'm misunderstanding something, or maybe if you're one of the people at Ionic who's been very nice helping us out, you know, let me know if there's a better way to do that. But for right now, this works. Again, probably something that probably something you could do a little bit differently. Traditionally, like I said, in our other applications, what we did was like, we did the checking on their main application. And then what we would do is like, okay, if they're logged in, then like give them these set of routes. If they're not logged in, give them these set of routes. So we actually did it right here inside of the main app file. So like there's the unlogged in version of the application, and then there's the logged in version of the application. That's kind of how we handled it. And then we baked in the preloader. And I might share an example of something more set up like that. But I think this is a pretty good example of just how it works in practice. Let's do one more thing. Let's add a logout button so that we can actually go back, right? So let's go down here in our screen and let's say, okay, if they are logged in, let's do an ion button. It says logout. Okay, I got a logout button. And then let's make a logout method. And just to be consistent, let's pass the event through. And then we're going to say this.auth.logout. And I don't really need to do anything after it happens. This event should then pick up and it'll fire and the state will render and we'll be good. So I think that's really all we need to do. You might throw a confirm around it, like, hey, are you sure you want to log out? You know, confirm, confirm, are you sure? So you might do something like that. I'm just going to leave it as it is. And let's not pass through the event, I guess. Okay, and then down here, what we can do is we can say, for super simplicity, we can just say onClick equals this.logout.bind this. So note, I'm doing it a little bit differently. So if you don't have any variables or any parameters you need to pass into your method, you can just do this logout or this, whatever the method is, .bind, .this. So it's the same thing as doing a fat arrow. So like they're both the same. They're both equivalent. Again, it just depends on if you want to pass in some parameters and your preference. So cool. So now that logout button should actually work. So if I click save, log out, boom, I'm logged out. I can now log in with Facebook. Hoo yeah, log out, log in with Google. Hoo yeah. All right, so there we have it, guys. I mean, it's literally that easy. And if you guys want to head on over to the GitHub repo, check it out. Get that auth service. It'll get you off to a good start. There's still, again, there's still some little things that could be better. There's a lot of matter of like how you want to structure. We have our own opinions on how you do it. And again, I'll go deeper into that in probably a more structured video or a future Madness cast. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of doing login with Firebase authentication. Really simple. If you add Twitter, the only weird thing about them or extra thing is that like everything has to be HTTPS, so you won't be able to actually test it on your local, I don't believe. But other than that, it's fairly the same thing. Email works, password works, register works. There's some other stuff. Again, if you go in this auth class, it's got all the native stuff set up. So there's a little bit of extra setup that you have to do in order to get like your you have to plug in your app ID and stuff like that inside of the actual apps. So if you see under like Facebook login, I think somewhere under here, or maybe under settings somewhere, there's like a place where you can put in your app ID and stuff like that. So there's a little bit more setup. Probably do another video on that as well. Tons of video ideas. But yeah, so that should get you off to a good start. Thanks again to Alex for giving us the suggestion. Please feel free to try this out. Again, this does work on an actual phone. So I don't actually have it running on a phone as a PWA. I guess I could real quick if you guys want to see it. So let's go ahead and commit this stuff. So let's say hook up basic logins. And we've already got Firebase set up on this thing, so I should be able to just do npm run deploy because I set up an awesome little deploy command, I think. Okay, so what this is doing is, again, it's just going to run a stencil build for the production build, so not the developer build like what we've been testing in the browser. It's going to run a production build, which is a little bit slimmed down, and then it's going to go about uploading that to Firebase and then give us our link. So now I can control click if you're using VS Code, and it should open up in our browser, and our login method should work just as well here as they did on our local. Boom! And they do. And as a final proof to the pudding, because Alex was like, yeah, this is not working in a PWA, which he was right. When we first got it set up, it was not running correctly as a PWA, but we were able to actually get it working. So hopefully we can get this on the screen here. Okay, good. Yeah, we can see it. All right, so I'm going to jump to this URL, which luckily is actually human readable. Madness-labs-PWA. .firebaseapp.com. So here, oh, why do I have pinch to zoom? That is terrible. So first off, let me make sure I didn't screw something up. Maximum scale 5. That doesn't seem right. All right, let me check something because I don't feel like this is... It's definitely the same. So one thing I'm noticing is I'm not getting the service worker on my local. I might have a caching problem. Let me see. What did I do wrong? What did I do? Everything looks good. Let me change some manifest stuff here. Maybe maybe it doesn't like that. And I'm going to check my deploy command as well. Make sure I've got everything set up correctly here. Deploy is just going to run a build and a deploy. Yep. Oh, yes. IT crowd jokes. We need more of that. Thank you. Thank you. Ba-doom-ts. Yes. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Yes. Yes. I just deleted my cache and reset it back up. Hopefully this deploy is what did it. So I noticed my service worker is not working, and that's why I'm not getting the prompt on my phone to install offline. Or it could be I've already installed it too. That's another thing. Okay, so it's going to have the stencil logo on there, but I'm totally cool with that. So I've added this guy to my home screen. So I'm going to jump into, oh God, it's backwards. Okay, so you can see there's my stencil application. So when I jump into this guy, it's going to get me to the same place, right? And I'm inside of now a PWA application. So hopefully I can get it close enough. So when I click on my Facebook login, what's different about our auth class is it's going to know that it's inside of the frame of a PWA. And so it's actually going to go out. Booyah, there we go. So it's actually going to go out and because our auth service has that check to see whether or not you're in a PWA, it's going to use the pop-up method on the desktop, which opens up that little pop-up window. But on the mobile, like on the PWA, once you add it to your home screen, it's actually going to redirect you to the sign-in provider. And then once I click on it, it's then going to redirect me back. And then the auth service is going to pick up on that. And then that's what's going to log us into the system. So you can see there, it actually is working inside. We've got our logout button. So it is working inside of an actual PWA. So there you have it, guys. I think that about wraps for this Madness cast. It was like twice the length because I didn't upload the first half. So hopefully that was really cool. Hopefully you guys got your authentication up and running. It's super easy. I can't say how much like all of these tools like Firebase and Stencil, how all of them have really helped speed up the process of web development and make it a lot easier for people to get these like really robust features that are kind of standard into their applications. And you can see like within the matter of an hour, we can have all the Facebook, Google, Twitter, GitHub, email, phone number, and even I saw Google Play Games. Like, why not? So we can get all of those set up very, very quickly. And hopefully you guys will check out favorite, whatever, our repo on GitHub. Check this guy out. This auth service is pretty awesome. It's a really good working start. And I'd love to see your guys' working examples of your auth stuff. So feel free to shoot that to us at Madness Labs on Twitter. As always, I've been Bobby. help us out on Patreon, peeps. Help us out, man. We're trying to make some more resources. So, all right. See you guys next week. Madness Labs out.